Hey guys, welcome back. If you are new here, I am really glad you found this channel because what we talk about here is the kind of thing most people are too uncomfortable to say out loud. And if you have been here before, then you already know that I do not sugarcoat anything. I say what women actually think, what women actually feel, and what women actually respond to, even when it is not what men want to hear. So grab a seat, because this one is going to be eye-opening. Let me say something that might make you a little uncomfortable right away. When a woman tells you she is not interested, that is not always the end of the story. I know that sounds strange. I know you have probably been told to respect that and move on. And yes, respecting boundaries is absolutely non-negotiable. But what I am talking about is something different. I am talking about the fact that a woman's feelings are not always fully formed in the first moment she meets a man. Attraction for women does not always arrive instantly the way it sometimes does for men. It builds, it develops, it grows in response to specific things that a man does, says, and most importantly, how he makes her feel over time. Here is what most men do not understand about women. We are not randomly attracted or unattracted to someone and then locked into that feeling forever. Our emotions are fluid, our perceptions shift, and the way a man carries himself, the energy he brings into a room, the way he treats himself and the people around him, all of that has the power to completely change how a woman sees him. Even if her first impression was neutral or indifferent. I have seen it happen. I have experienced it personally, and I am going to break down exactly why it happens and what triggers that shift from the inside of a woman's mind. What makes this topic so important is that most men are going about this completely the wrong way. They either chase too hard and make themselves look desperate, or they give up too quickly and walk away from something that could have developed into something genuinely beautiful. Both of those approaches miss the point entirely, and today I am going to walk you through what actually works, what women actually respond to, and what makes a man go from someone we barely notice to someone we genuinely cannot get out of our heads. This is not theory, this is not guesswork, this is a woman telling you the truth about women. And trust me, by the time this video is done, you are going to look at attraction and relationships in a completely different way. 1. We notice everything. You just don't know what we're looking everything. You just don't know what we're looking at. Let me tell you something that most women will never sit down and explain to a man directly. We are always paying attention, always. But what we are paying attention to is probably not what you think. Most men assume that when a woman is sizing them up, she is looking at the obvious things, the clothes, the car, the physical appearance, the social status. And yes, those things register. I am not going to pretend they do not. But they are nowhere near the top of the list when it comes to what actually holds our attention and what starts to build genuine attraction. What we are really watching from the very first moment is so much deeper than the surface, and most men walk right past it without even knowing it exists. What we are actually watching is how a man carries himself when nobody is performing for him. We watch how he treats the waiter at a restaurant. We watch how he responds when something does not go his way. We watch whether his confidence is consistent or whether it only shows up when he is trying to impress someone. We watch how he interacts with his friends, how he holds himself in a conversation, whether he listens or just waits to talk, whether he is comfortable in his own skin or constantly seeking some kind of external validation. All of that is being absorbed quietly and continuously long before a woman has made any kind of decision about how she feels about a man. And the men who do not know this are the ones who put all their energy into the wrong things and then wonder why it never seems to land. There was a man who used to come into the same coffee shop every morning. He was not the most conventionally attractive man in the room. He was not flashy, he did not drive an expensive car, and he never went out of his way to start. Perfectly timed jokes can cover that up once we have felt it. Here is what trying too hard actually looks like from where we are standing. It looks like a man who steers every conversation back to his achievements. It looks like someone who name-drops, who exaggerates, who laughs a little too loudly at his own stories, who checks our reaction after everything he says to make sure it landed the right way. It looks like a man who agrees with everything we say because he thinks that is what we want. Who changes his opinions mid-conversation when he senses we feel differently. Who is so focused on making a good impression that he forgets to actually connect with the person sitting right in front of him. And here is the painful truth about all of that. It does the exact opposite of what it is intended to do. Instead of making us think more of a man, it makes us question whether there is anything real beneath the performance. What we actually want and what genuinely works is presence. Real grounded, unhurried presence. A man who is comfortable enough in himself to just show up as he is without the sales pitch, without the highlight reel, without the constant need to manage how he is being perceived. A man who asks genuine questions and actually listens to the answers. A man who disagrees with us respectfully when he genuinely sees things differently, because that tells us he has a real mind and real values that are not just going to bend to whatever conversations with anyone, but every single morning he came in, said good morning to the staff by name, sat down and got to work on whatever he was doing with this calm, focused energy that was impossible not to notice. One day, he and a woman ended up talking because they reached for the same book on a nearby shelf. And within 10 minutes of conversation, she realized she had already been forming an impression of him for weeks without even consciously knowing it. His consistency, his warmth with the people around him, his quiet sense of purpose. She had been watching all of it. That is how women work. 2. Stop trying to impress us and do this instead. Stop trying to impress us and do this instead. Okay, I am going to be really honest with you here, because this is something that women talk about amongst themselves all the time, but rarely say directly to men, and it needs to be said. When a man is trying too hard to impress a woman, we feel it immediately. It is not subtle. It is not hidden, and it is not attractive. There is a very specific energy that comes with a man who is performing rather than simply being himself, and women are incredibly sensitive to that energy. It feels forced, it feels like pressure, and instead of drawing us in, it actually creates distance because it communicates something underneath all the effort that works directly against attraction. It communicates insecurity dressed up as confidence, and no amount of impressive facts, expensive taste, or we want to hear a man who can sit in a comfortable silence without feeling the need to fill every gap with something impressive. 3. The moment we decide, if you're worth our attention, let me pull back the curtain on something that most women never explain to men. And honestly, most women do not even fully explain to themselves. There is a specific moment, sometimes it happens in the first few minutes, sometimes it takes a little longer, where a woman makes an internal decision about whether a man is worth her genuine attention. Not just polite conversation, not just surface-level pleasantness, but real invested attention. And that decision is not made the way most men think it is. It is not made based on looks alone, or on how smooth the opening line was, or on how impressive the first impression seemed. It is made based on something much more instinctive, much more emotional, and much more revealing than any of those things. What triggers that internal decision is a feeling, specifically the feeling of whether or not a man's energy feels safe, genuine, and worth investing in. Women are constantly and often unconsciously running an internal assessment of the men they interact with. We are asking ourselves questions that we are not even fully aware of asking. Does this man seem comfortable with himself, or is he performing? Does he make me feel at ease? Or does his energy feel like it needs something from me? Does he seem like someone who is going somewhere in life, or is he just filling time? Does he treat me like a person he is genuinely curious about, or like a target he is trying to win? All of those questions get answered not through what a man says, but through the energy, the body language, the consistency, and the overall feeling that his presence creates. And the answers come fast. What most men do not realize is that this assessment is happening whether they are aware of it or not. A woman is not sitting there consciously thinking through a checklist. It is far more intuitive than that. It is a gut feeling that forms quickly and quietly. And once it forms, it takes something significant to shift it. This is why first impressions matter so deeply with women. Not because we are shallow or quick to judge, but because we are wired to pick up on emotional and energetic cues very quickly as a form of natural discernment. A man who walks in with genuine confidence, who makes real eye contact, who listens more than he talks, and who seems completely unbothered by the need to prove himself for why the nice guy always finishes last with us. Always finishes last with us. Let me be completely honest about this one, because it is a topic that causes a lot of confusion and a lot of pain for men who genuinely mean well. And I want to address it with the respect it deserves, because the men who fall into this pattern are usually some of the kindest, most sincere men out there. But kindness alone, without backbone, without boundaries, without a strong sense of self, is not attractive to women. And the sooner men understand why, the sooner they can stop repeating a pattern that keeps leaving them frustrated, overlooked, and wondering what they are doing wrong. First, let me be clear about what I mean when I say the nice guy. I am not talking about a man who is genuinely kind, considerate, and respectful. Those qualities are deeply attractive, and any woman who tells you differently is not a woman worth your time. What I'm talking about is a very specific type of man who uses niceness as a strategy rather than expressing it as a genuine character trait. The nice guy in this context is the man who agrees with everything, who never expresses a real opinion, who bends over backwards to accommodate a woman's every preference, who showers her with attention and affection before any real connection has been established. And who does all of this not purely out of genuine care, but out of a deep need to be liked, chosen, and validated. And women feel that distinction clearly, even when we cannot always put it into words. The reason this pattern does not work comes down to attraction psychology. When a man makes himself completely available, completely agreeable, and completely accommodating from the very beginning, he removes all the natural tension that attraction requires to develop. There is no curiosity because everything is already given. There is no sense of a real layered person to discover because the nice guy has already put every card on the table in an attempt to be chosen. And perhaps most importantly, there is no sense that this man truly values himself. Because a man who truly values himself does not give everything away to someone he barely knows in exchange for approval. What actually makes us think about you when you're not around? 5. What actually makes us think about you when you're not around? Here is something I want men to genuinely understand because it is one of the most important things I could say in this entire video. A woman thinking about you when you are not around is not an accident. It is not random. It does not just happen because you were physically present or because you said something smooth in the moment. It happens because of a very specific kind of emotional imprint that certain men leave behind after an interaction. And most men have absolutely no idea how to create it intentionally. The men who do create it are the ones who stay in a woman's thoughts long after the conversation has ended, long after the evening is over, long after the moment has passed. And the men who do not create it are forgotten almost immediately, no matter how much effort they put in during the interaction itself. The first thing that makes a woman think about a man when he is not around is the feeling of being genuinely seen. Not complimented, not flattered, not impressed, seen. There is a profound difference between a man who tells a woman she is beautiful and a man who notices something specific and real about who she is as a person and reflects it back to her in a way that feels completely authentic. When a man pays attention deeply enough to notice something that most people overlook, when he asks a question that cuts through the small talk and touches something real, when he makes a woman feel like he actually understands something about her that she rarely gets to express, that feeling does not leave when the conversation ends. It follows her. It plays back in her mind. It makes her wonder about him, think about him, and want more of that feeling. A woman went on a date with a man who, in the middle of a completely ordinary conversation, paused and said something that showed he had been listening to every single thing she had shared that evening. Not just the obvious things, but the small details, the things said in passing, the feelings beneath the words. He did not make a big deal of it. He just reflected it back. Naturally, as if he had genuinely absorbed everything she said and found it worth remembering. She went home that night and could not stop thinking about him. Not because he was the most attractive man she had ever met, not because the date was the most elaborate or impressive, but because in that one moment he made her feel more understood than she had felt in a very long time. That feeling is what lingered. That is what made him impossible to forget. 6. We test you without telling you. Here's what we're looking for without telling you. Here's what we're looking for. I'm going to tell you something that most women would probably not openly admit to, but it is completely true and you deserve to know it. Women test men. We do it consistently. We do it naturally. And in most cases, we do it without even fully realizing we are doing it. It is not a malicious thing. It is not a game designed to hurt anyone. And it is not something we sit down and plan out deliberately. In most cases, it is an instinctive behavior rooted in something very real. The need to know whether a man is genuinely who he presents himself to be, or whether the version we are seeing is just a carefully maintained performance that will eventually crack under pressure. And the only way to find that out is to apply a little pressure and see what happens. The tests we run are not always obvious, and that is exactly the point. Sometimes it is something as simple as cancelling plans last minute to see whether a man gets desperate and tries to reschedule immediately, or whether he takes it in stride and gets on with his life. Sometimes it is disagreeing with something a man says just to see whether he holds his position with confidence or immediately folds to avoid conflict. Sometimes it is pulling back slightly in communication to see whether he panics and floods her phone with messages, whether he remains calm and unbothered. Sometimes it is sharing something vulnerable to see whether he handles it with genuine care or uses it as an opportunity to push for something he wants. All of these small moments are tests, and the results tell us far more about a man's true character than anything he could ever say about himself. What we are specifically looking for when we test a man comes down to a few core things. We are looking for emotional stability. Does he stay grounded when things get a little uncertain? Or does his confidence evaporate the moment he feels slightly unsure of where he stands? We are looking for genuine confidence, not the performed kind that shows up when everything is going well, but the real kind that stays consistent even when we are not making things easy for him. We are looking for boundaries. Does he have them? Does he maintain them? And does he respect ours without being told twice? And we are looking for authenticity. Is this man the same person in every situation, or does his character shift depending on what he thinks we want from him in any given moment? Those are the things the tests are designed to reveal. The honest truth. Most women will never tell you to your face. 7. The honest truth. Most women will never tell you to your face. I want to close this out with the most honest section of this entire video, and I need you to receive this in the spirit it is being given, with complete respect, genuine care, and the kind of honesty that only comes from someone who actually wants to see you win. Because everything I'm about to say comes from a real place, and if you can hear it without getting defensive, it has the power to completely change the way you approach women, relationships, and most importantly, yourself. So take a breath, open your mind, and let me tell you what most women think but will never say directly to your face. The honest truth is this: a large number of men are walking through life with a version of themselves that is significantly underdeveloped. And they have no idea, because nobody has ever cared enough to tell them. They have never done the real inner work. They have never sat with their insecurities long enough to understand where they come from and how to move past them. They have never built a life of genuine purpose and direction that exists completely independently of whether a woman is in it or not. And because of that, they bring a version of themselves into relationships and interactions that is still searching, still seeking, still needing something from the outside world to fill something that is empty on the inside. And women feel that emptiness. We cannot always name it, but we feel it. And no matter how attracted we might be to a man on the surface, that emptiness underneath is something that consistently holds real connection back. Here is the wake-up call that I genuinely wish more men would hear and take seriously. The work that needs to be done is internal before it is anything else. Before the dating strategies, before the conversation techniques, before any of the external things that men focus on when they want to attract women, the foundation needs to be built from the inside. That means getting honest about the fears and insecurities that are quietly running the show. It means building genuine confidence through real discipline and real achievement, rather than waiting to feel confident before taking action. It means developing emotional intelligence, learning how to communicate honestly, and becoming a man who is genuinely at peace with who he is and genuinely excited about where he is going. That version of a man, the one who has done the real work on himself, is the version that women cannot resist. And more importantly, he is the version that attracts the right woman rather than just any woman. Here is the bold truth conclusion that most women whisper to each other but never say to men directly. The majority of men who struggle with attraction are not struggling because of how they look, how much money they have, or what they say in the first 5 minutes of meeting a woman. They are struggling because they have never truly met themselves. And a man who has not met himself cannot fully connect with anyone else, no matter how hard he tries. Everything shared in this video comes from a genuine place. The noticing, the testing, the way our feelings develop over time, the things that make a man stay in our thoughts long after he has left the room. All of it points back to the same thing. Women are drawn to men who are real, men who are grounded, men who have done the quiet, unglamorous work of building themselves into someone they are genuinely proud to be. That is not a high bar, it is an honest one, and here is what I want you to remember above everything else. A woman's initial disinterest is not a verdict on your worth. It is simply a starting point. What happens after that starting point depends entirely on the man you choose to become from this moment forward. Now I want to hear from you. Has anything in this video shifted the way you see yourself or the way you approach women? Have you recognized yourself in any of these sections? Honestly, drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I read every single one and I will be responding personally. This is a real conversation between real people, and your perspective genuinely matters here.